Dear viewers, hope you are well. The summary of my today's talk are the risks of a nuclear conflict must not be underestimated. NATO is engaged in shadow war against Russia. The circumstance may lead to World War III. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov has warned that the conflict in Ukraine risked escalating into a third world war and that NATO was in essence engaged in a proxy war with Moscow by supplying Kyiv with weapons. In a wide-ranging interview with television channel of Russia, Lavrov said the risks of a nuclear conflict must not be underestimated and that the core of any agreement to end the conflict in Ukraine would depend largely on the military situation on the ground. The interview was aired hours after US Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Defense Secretary Lloyd visited Kyiv and promised more military assistance to Ukraine. Austin said the United States wanted to see Russia weakened and pledged to arm Ukraine to help it win against Moscow. The US is also due to host a gathering of more than 40 countries this week for Ukraine-related defense talks that will focus on more weapons deliveries. During Monday's interview, Lavrov was asked about the importance of avoiding World War III and whether the current situation was comparable to the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, a low point in US-Soviet relations. Lavrov said Russia was doing a lot to uphold the principle of striving to prevent nuclear war at all costs. This is our key position on which we base everything. The risks now are considerable. He also said, I would not want to elevate those risks artificially. Many would like that. The danger is serious, real, and we must not underestimate it. So, according to Lavrov, the danger is serious, real. Moscow calls the Russia-Ukraine war a special military operation to disarm Ukraine and protect it from Nazis. Kyiv and the West says this is a false pretext for an unprovoked war of aggression on a sovereign country by Russian President Vladimir Putin. The Russian leader early on in the war also put his nuclear deterrent forces on high alert, citing aggressive statements from the West. Lavrov, defending Moscow's action, also blamed Washington for the lack of dialogue. Lavrov said the United States has practically ceased all contact simply because we were obliged to defend Russia in Ukraine. He claimed, repeating the rationale for Moscow's invasion of its southern neighbor. But he said Western supplies of sophisticated weapons, including Javelin anti-tank missiles, armored vehicles, and advanced drones, are provocative measures calculated to prolong the conflict rather than bring it to an end. He said these weapons will be a legitimate target for Russia's military acting within the context of the special operation. Storage facilities in western Ukraine have been targeted more than once. How can it be otherwise? He added, NATO in essence is engaged in a war with Russia through a proxy and is arming that proxy. War means war. He also claimed that Kyiv authorities are not negotiating in good faith and President Zelensky, a former actor, was like British Prime Minister Boris Johnson in playing to the public rather than addressing the task at hand, negotiation. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova said, information by the Russian Defense Ministry published today clearly proves Washington, in close coordination with NATO partners, has moved on to a final stage of plotting provocations in Ukraine, which should convince the global community that Russia is using poisonous combat substances and biological agents. She stressed that Washington's initial plan involved economic pressure on Russia to make Moscow completely consider legitimate interests in the security sphere. Russian Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov also said on April 25th, Ukraine took a major step back by abandoning agreements reached in Istanbul with Russia. I think that this step or two steps back were made above all on the advice of our American British colleagues. Maybe the Poles played some part here, the Balts. They reverted from the position that we were ready to take as a foundation and told them about, he pointed out. Critics say by sending diplomats, US moves back to Ukraine are generally for political purposes to prove that Washington has confidence in Kyiv but will do nothing significant to completely change the situation. For instance, how to safely transport those supplies, weapons and ammunition to Ukrainian forces surrounded by or engaging with Russian troops is a big problem, and who are truly benefiting from the US supplies is also a question. Thank you.